Certainly didn't at half time. Here's Asprilla. Goes for. It's there. Oh. Warren Barton has made it 3-3.
Contesting a decision that involved a penalty appeal. Warren Barton was the Newcastle defender involved. Manchester United thought handball. That suggests otherwise.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new show. We are live here on NUFC Insiders. My name is Chris, the American Magpie, and I got the legend, the one and only Warren Barton. We had to start you with that video, man. Do you like it?
I love it. It's fantastic. You done very well to get my goals in there. There weren't that many, but you got me goals. But yeah, the hair's changed a little bit, Chris. The hair has changed a bit.
But you maintain yourself, man. You know, I guess I can get right down to it with Nobi Solana told me that you were a pretty well dressed guy. He told me to ask you how many suits you had back in the day because you had a new one every match or whatever he was referring to. So
yeah, I had quite a few, probably in the 30 rounds of suits. But Nobby only had one, and that was it. That was so he just kept changing his jacket now and again. So, but yeah, no, he was. I know he was on the podcast a little while ago, and
yep.
A great little player, great fella. Hopefully, he can get a role in the club, maybe coaching, because he was obviously with Peru's national team. But
yep.
Nobby used to play the trumpet whenever we was away. 11 o'clock, he used to go down the corridor, and that's 11 p.m. and start playing his trumpet while we was all trying to get some rest. So that's Norberto Solano with his trumpet and with one suit going forward. So, but a great fella and another Newcastle player that the fans love.
And just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, so we're just waiting on you. I mean, it's coming.
Yeah, yeah. They're running out of people, so sooner or later they come down to me.
Yeah, man, it's been great. So thank you for wanting to come on. It means a lot for the channel. Yeah, I mean, we, people out there, if you're watching, if you're listening, bring your question, put a Q in front of it, and we're going to try to ask as many questions as we can to the legend Warren Barton. I guess we could start with 1989, and you weren't born in 89, but you grew up in Stoke Newton, England, and you were born there. And then 1989, you started playing for Maidstone United. I mean, was it always a dream of yours to play football? I mean, did you know you were going to be a footballer? How did all that happen?
Yeah, I think back in the UK, and particularly in England, soccer is the number one sport. There's
Right.
very rarely cricket, possibly rugby, was more to do with the educated people, should I say. But the people from the streets was just about soccer. And I've got an older brother called John, who's 4 years older than me. And we used to go over the park, over the fields from when the sun come up until the sun went down. And even then we're playing the dark on a full length field. So that's all I really knew. And I loved being out there. I loved playing. Being born in Islington, it was very close to Highbury, which is Arsenal's old stadium. They've obviously moved now to the Emirates, but I grew up being an Arsenal fan. People like Liam Brady, Frank Stapleton was my heroes. And then lucky enough where I was, I played school soccer. And in England, you have like Sunday teams. It's a Sunday league, which is huge. Every kid virtually in England, Scotland, Wales will play Sunday football. And in my area in particular, Islington and on the east side of London was really strong teams. And I used to play for them. And my first transfer at 11 years old, or maybe even 10 years old, the guy used to have a fruit stall selling fruit in a market in East London. And I got transferred from one team to a team called Tigers for a box of fruit. And to sway the deal was a pineapple. I'd never seen a pineapple in life. So he gave me a pineapple and that really swayed the deal. So I transferred across to another team, that got, into finals, winning the league. And the rest is history. Actually at 13, I got told I was too small at Watford with Graham Taylor, the late Graham Taylor. He was the head coach, but long on the youth ranks, a schoolboy age. Said I was too small, never going to make it. I dropped down to a lower league team called Leyton Orient, which again is in the east side of London. Got there until I was 16. Again, the legendary Frank Clark, who's a legend at Newcastle in the 60s and 70s. He actually told me I was never going to make it. Oh, sorry, not never going to make it. I was too small to make it as a professional soccer player.
Really?
And three years later, I represented my country. So I was just a late developer. But Maidstone was the turning point for me, because I could have played non-league, which I was doing for 18 months. And the great Barry Fry was the manager of Barnet. And there was a really big amateur football team, like a AAA. And they was paying ridiculous money for players to play at lower league football. But I had the chance, and it was a third of what I was offered at Barnet. I went down to Maidstone with Keith Peacock as the manager, who's Gareth Peacock's son, who's actually, again, another Newcastle connection there. Gareth played for Newcastle for many, many years as well. I played for his dad at Maidstone, and they first got into the Football League, and I was only there 10 months. We made the playoffs at the time. Unfortunately, we got beat in the playoffs to Cambridge, that had a certain player called Dion Dublin, who went off to go and play for Manchester United. And then I got my move for £300,000, which was a record for a non-league player, to go to the Crazy Gang at Wimbledon. But non-league football was great for me, being 5'2", 5'3", walking into a changing room with a builder, a construction worker, policeman. And if you won the game, it was you could get them a $10 bonus or a $15 bonus. And if you conceded the goal, they'd beat the crap out of you. So you learn pretty quickly how to play soccer to win. And it was a great learning curve for me to go and play lower league football, and then obviously to play professional football at Maidstone. Even though it was for less money, it worked out better in the long run for me to go forward. So yeah, it just shows you it's a long journey. There's ups and downs, but lucky enough, I had my brother and sister and my mum behind me, and really got me through it. And to answer your question, Chris, it's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. I wasn't particularly the mathematic genius. I wasn't really into being a trade, learning about electricity or plumbing or anything like that. All I knew was soccer, and that's all I ever wanted to do. But my brother was a big role model for me. He played lower league football, but he enjoyed the drink and the girls more than anything else. So, and he still does, actually. So he done well. And that's how our life turns out. And now I'm in sunny California, and I've been here for the last 16 years. But yeah, it was a hell of a journey, and I owe Maidstone a lot. And great that they're obviously doing well in the FA Cup. I was hopefully that they was going to draw Newcastle, because it would have been a real iconic moment for myself to see Maidstone go up to St James's Park. I might even gone over there to watch the game. But yeah, it was a good club for me. Keith Peacock was great as a manager. He then went off to do well with Alan Curbishley at Charlton, and was a good coach there for well over a decade. And I went off and played in the Premier League for 12, 15 years. So yeah, I was lucky to do that.
Yeah, and then in 1990, you go to Wimbledon, which a club that you came back in 2004. It is, I mean, we're gonna get to Newcastle in a minute, but is Wimbledon a team that you hold dear to your heart, kind of like Maidstone, a team that you began your career? I mean, yeah,
very much so. I mean, they had some good players. It's part of the Crazy Gang as well. And I went there as a young boy, a 20-year-old boy, and I left there as a man. A lot of good friends. We're still on WhatsApp now. We're probably 15, 20 of us on that. Obviously, Robbie Earle from NBC, and he does the Premier League football here. And so we have that connection at Wimbledon. We're still on WhatsApp with a lot of the players there. And it really was an ideal club for me, because if you can imagine being an amateur in the sense of mentality and the players sticking together and maybe not the most gifted but hardworking, coming from Maidstone to Wimbledon was probably the perfect combination for me, because Wimbledon was all about the spirit. As I said, maybe not the most technical players in the world, maybe not the most gifted players in the world, but they had big hearts. We had togetherness and we had spirit. and that took us a long way. And ultimately, I had 5 fantastic seasons there, and I loved time. Again, Joe Kinnear was my manager for large parts of my career there, who then went off to manage Newcastle, funny enough. And yeah, so just a great time being in the Premier League. My first 2 games was against a great Liverpool team that was winning doubles and winning great, and then the Arsenal team that was winning competitions as well. So my first 2 home games at Plough Lane for Wimbledon was against Liverpool and Arsenal. So that was quite a defining moment for me. And when I was at Wimbledon, we never finished below 9th, I don't think, which is incredible when you think of the resources that we had compared to the likes of Man United, Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea, and we punched well above our weight. And I loved it there. It was a great football club, great people there, and yeah, we had a good time. We couldn't get away with it now. There's too many cameras. There's too many people that would get upset. But we used to win a lot of our games in the tunnel before we even got on the field.
Yeah. And then Newcastle United, 95. I mean, it's I would say around that time. I say this again. I'm really young. I was born in 94, so
that makes me feel old. That makes me feel old.
well, and the reason I say that is because, I mean, maybe I'm not in the place to say this, but I believe that in the late 90s, Newcastle were part of this, I guess you can call Big Four, with Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and I would say it was Newcastle named in those teams fighting. And you went to 2 FA Cup finals, 2 with Arsenal, the team of you're a fan of them, and Manchester United. Why, Warren? I want to ask you the question that most fans ask: how could we not get the trophies in those finals?
But I think also we finished second in the Premier League twice.
That is true.
And the main thing that jumps out, we was 12 points clear. And I think anyone else except Manchester United with Sir Alex Ferguson, we might have had that, and we failed, unfortunately, as players. And not a day goes by that you don't reminisce and think about what could have been, and not particularly for myself or for the players, but for the city, for the football club. You look at Leicester; they've won the Premier League. Blackburn, in their time with Jack Walker and Kenny Dalglish, they've won it. Obviously, Chelsea, Liverpool have won it now. Arsenal, and it should have been Newcastle. But I think a bit of an experience from the manager and the players turned around a little bit when we lost the game against Manchester United at home. And just sometimes the harder we tried with the pressure, the worse it got. And, it's like having sand in your hands, just trying to grab hold of it and it keeps slipping through your fingers. But when you think of the FA Cup, Arsenal at that time with Arsene Wenger was going for the double. So it's not as if we played against teams that was mid-table, just ironic that the following year was Chelsea, Aston Villa, and they was mid-table teams. And we might have, you never know, it's the cup final, but we might have ended up winning the cup final. And then we played the year after Manchester United that went on and won the treble. So, we come up against 2 really good teams, well coached, good players. And also the players had a winning mentality. They knew how to win. They knew how to win big games. And unfortunately, we come short. It wasn't through lack of trying and preparing. I know Nobby said about your Man United game. I don't think with Rude, I don't think he thought we had a chance of winning. So I don't think he really prepared the team well enough to go out there. And it just showed, in the performances. But, as I said, there was great times. We was part of the Premier League history of the entertainers and that time of the Premier League when it was really bursting onto the shores over here. And I speak to a lot of people at Fox Soccer when it started showing in the mid-90s, late 90s, when the Premier League was being shown. Newcastle was box office. We was playing on Sundays, we were playing on Mondays. So a lot of people can remember, and it's an iconic kit as well, the black and white uniform. So that jumps out straight away with the Newcastle brand now sponsorship that we had for many, many years. So to be part of that time in the Premier League was fantastic. But yeah, it's a tough question, Chris, to answer, because I wish we would have won something. It would have been meant to so many people, but we come against probably the Patriots at the time that keep beating everybody, and they just could find a way to win. And unfortunately, we was number one of the teams that they beat.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Nobi in the interview earlier in the week, he said, that he thinks that Ruud was just a young manager, didn't have all the experience compared to Sir Alex Ferguson, who had all the experience. And
and he dropped me and Shay Given for the final. So that
is true.
Yeah, we played every single game, and he didn't even have the respect to come and tell me and Shay he left it over to Steve Clark, his assistant coach. So
Yeah.
some things are called karma, my friend. But obviously we wanted him to win, but I was
Right.
very disappointed with the way he handled it. And that was rude. That was rude down to a t-shirt. He did it with Alan and Duncan Ferguson in a big game when he left Alan out. So there you go.
Right.
I'm not the
Yeah.
if he can do it to Shearer, he can do it to anybody.
Exactly. That's actually one of the things that Nobi said as well. I mean, he just didn't have a relationship with the locker room, which managers nowadays, sometimes some managers don't think about. And it's really important. You got to keep the players happy.
Yeah, I think Chris, when you're dealing with big players, and that's the biggest thing. You look at maybe where Bill Belichick at the moment, bringing up the Patriots, he's maybe so far away. Mourinho now, the way he is, he's so detached from man management, and that's a huge part of top sport. It's getting the best out of players, believing in the players, and they have to believe in you. But unfortunately for Rude, it wasn't part of his DNA. So unfortunately that was part of the time.
Now on the Arsenal game, that was Dalglish is the manager, and that game I again, I was really young, I never watched it, and but you played that game. I believe were you kind of like a right winger, but not like all the way up front?
Yeah, no, Kenny had a plan to have Alessandro Bastoni to mark Overmars, the great Dutch winger, Barcelona and Arsenal player, because of his pace. And I've been playing fullback most of my career, and I felt with Mark Overmars that yes, he's quicker than me, but I knew Mark and I knew how his traits and what he liked. I've been playing against Ryan Giggs for years and years and years. So Mark was a tremendous player. But Kenny changed it around, and Alessandro Pistone had never played against Overmars. I don't think. He just went with him with pace. Well, pace is not quick enough with Overmars because he's electric. And I think within the first 17, 18 minutes, they scored. Petit put a ball over Pistone's head. He cut inside and scored against Shea. And that was a game over, really. We could never, ever get back to it. We hit the crossbar. We had a couple of opportunities, but with all due respect, Arsenal was streets ahead of us. So I played in that to stop Mark getting it to feet. But Mark never wanted it to feet. Mark Overmars wanted it over the top. So, of course, you do what the manager wants you to do and you want to go out there. But they sort of played to Mark's strength was put the ball over the top. He's quicker than anybody else. He cut inside and put it away. But the thinking behind it was to stop him getting the ball to feet. When he doesn't get it to feet, he runs over the top. So that plan didn't really work out either.
Yeah. I mean, I want to ask you a question that most people ask to different former players, and not only about football, but basketball, baseball, and of course they say yes. Today we would be unstoppable. But let me ask you. I mean, that team, that Newcastle United team from that era, late '90s, what would they be able to do in this Premier League today? What do you think?
Like they did that time, they could be able to compete. Now, whether that's beating Manchester City, the way that they play, I'd fancy our chances in midfield, and particularly our front line with Les and Shearer and Ginola and Keith Gillespie, and even put Nobby in there a little bit later on in the time. I fancy our chances against them. Now, it's all in the hands of the gods. We'll win, but I think we'd have a good run in like we did at that time, because Manchester United had everything. They had quick players, they had good athletes, and they had winners. Cantona, Roy Keane, Steve Bruce, people like that. Real winners of football games. And then you look to Arsenal. You look across. You've got Tony Adams, Martin Keown, David Seaman, Petit, Vieira, Henry, Bergkamp, Freddie Lundberg, and Ray Parlour, and then the two little rats at the back, Lee Dixon and Winterburn. So that's a hell of a team, So, people talk about the game change, and it has. The rules have changed. You can't maybe tackle as hard as you did before, and that's all fair. But I think every team that was successful in the 90s and that would do. I think Mourinho's team now, if you put them, that Chelsea team, against Liverpool with Lampard and Drogba, they'd be okay. They wouldn't struggle. Do you know what I mean? We was good athletes as well. So I always think it's difficult because you always look at the GOAT. Whether we've just had the statue of Kobe Bryant put out there. Is he in that category with LeBron and Michael Jordan? So it's always difficult to say. All I would say that any team in that era would be able to compete with what's out there now, and that's that's a credit to the players of that time, because now you have so many assets to you, whether it's a fitness coach, whether it's dietitians, whether it's vitamins, whether it's massage, so you have so many things that can enhance your career and help your career now, where because of finances, and maybe we didn't have that then. So, but let me tell you now, Thierry Henry was an athlete and he could play now. So don't be led by it that, oh, there's only athletes now. I mean, you know, Ryan Giggs was an athlete. David Beckham was an athlete. They're top class players and they're athletic as well. Zidane was an athlete. So, you know, I think we get caught up a little bit, but the game's changed slightly in the sense, but good players can play in most levels, like Wayne Rooney's proved that before.
Do you think that? I mean, we focus. We have a lot of fast players now. I mean, we did before, like you said. But do you think that the game is focusing more on a vertical game than just having players like that can stop the ball and think? Like number 10 is gone. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it goes in cycles, doesn't it? You know, we had 10 years of the Barcelona Spain team. Well, before that, in the 90s, you had the athletic French team, the power, the physical presence, the movement of the ball. You know, they dominated for so much. France winning the Euros, winning the World Cup. They're having their cycle back now because of how they've gone back to how they want to play. Spain was brought up with Barcelona, keeping possession of the ball, moving the ball around. I think now you've got a blend of everybody, you know, and the game has gone a little bit too much, maybe back to front pretty quickly. Possession with a purpose, they call it now. When we was doing it, it was called long ball. But now it's called possession with a purpose. But you still have them teams. As I said, Manchester City possess the ball really well. You look at, I think the modern game now is really Real Madrid. Players that are technically gifted, but play at a high level and a high speed of play. You know, that it's relentless for the whole 90 minutes. Their players are relentlessly trying to probe, trying to score goals. It's very rare that the game slows down. Barcelona, you know, we spoke about it with Messi, how many minutes he used to walk in a game. You know, you couldn't do that a few years ago, but that's because he's gifted. He's not from this planet, so he can do what he likes. But it just shows you how much the game's gone in cycles. So now I think you are talking about more athletic players, a little bit what we see in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah. Now that the game is changing, you might have heard that we're looking to add a blue card. What do you think on that? A blue card to the game?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful not to change the game. The game of it's not the NFL, it's not baseball, it's not hockey, you know, sin bins. We're soccer, football, and this is our game. You know, we don't put our rules into the NFL. You never see the NFL asking about, should we have offsides? Should we change it around and things like that? You know, I know you've got to be in a certain line when you go and things like that, but you can maybe move and go. So they don't come into soccer and ask about that thing. So I just think we have to be careful. The only thing I would say, Chris, that I would be up for, because I've maybe been living in America too long, is having a timeout with your coach. There's certain moments in the game that you'll watch and your team's either all over the place and can't get. And if you just had a 30-second, it would make money to sell commercials, but also you could have time with your players. And, you know, I've coached and got my pro license, is that you can have like 30 seconds with your team just to calm them down, have a little bit of tactics, and then go again. But as I said, I know we have certain rules, but we're not the NFL. We're not baseball. It's, you know, goalkeepers, rules and regulations. I mean, it's called the beautiful game for a reason. So we don't have to keep trying to change it. And I'm not an old school. I love change. I think VAR has got a great point to have in the game. I think it's to people that are using it that we have the problem. But we don't need to keep reinventing the game, because the game was wonderful as it was, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 3 months ago. So it's just taken away from what the game is. The game is supposed to be end to end, you know, like NBA basketball. If you started changing that and swapping it around, people would get frustrated with it. But yeah, it's the biggest game in the world, so people want to have an input. So people want to try and change it.
That is true. We can go with some comments real quick. Actually, you know what? Let me show you. I want to get your reaction. I want to show you some pictures, and I want to get the first thing that comes to mind. The first thing that comes to mind. And hopefully it's a good reaction.
Yeah.
But well, this is a good one. We talked a little bit about it, but what comes to mind when you see this picture? A club that's
Maidstone first. My first team picture as a young player, when we used to have our team picture, that reminds me of that day, because that's when I thought, yeah, I've become a professional soccer player, because we have a team picture where one line sits down on a chair and the others are behind you, and it goes into what we used to have in England called Shoot Magazine, Match Magazine, 90 Minutes, which I don't think they have anymore. They have some of them, but not as much as they used to. So that Maidstone shirt reminds me of the first time when I had my first professional photo.
Yeah. What about this one? And you in this shirt?
Oh, that's at Vicarage Road. My England debut. That's what I'm saying. 3 years before, I was told I was too small, never going to make it. And then
Wow.
I was playing at Vicarage Road for, quite ironically, a team like Watford, who actually said I was too small, and Graham Taylor was the manager for England. He picked me for England. So it's quite ironic how things turned around. And actually, Graham remembered that when he gave me my cap. He actually remembered that happening. He was never in charge when he told me I was too small at 13, but he remembers it happening at Watford. So I'll go back to Watford and play for my country. So
Yeah.
for a team that told me I was too small. So yeah.
Do you think that you should have played for England more times?
Well, it's not for me to say.
Right.
Gary Neville was obviously a very, very good defender, and he had a good relationship with David Beckham. I played 12 years in the top flight, and I was playing for one of the biggest clubs, but it's people's opinion, at the end of the day. But if you ask me, I felt I was good enough to play for my country. Unfortunately, my main cap that I got was the famous game that got abandoned in the Republic of Ireland. So maybe Terry didn't think it was a good omen to have me in there, because the game got abandoned after 27 minutes with crowd trouble. But as I said, from a boy from North London, play for my country, they can never take that away from me. But I was playing at a high level for a long time, but only managed to get the 3, 6 caps, whatever it was, going forward.
Yeah. What do you think when you see this?
Me running up and down the wing, chasing someone, probably chasing Nobby. Probably try and chase Nobby for him to give me the ball. But yeah, just great memories wearing the black and white shirt. People always ask me what's my favourite game, and every time that I was there, I was lucky enough to play 220 times. I loved every minute of it. The club, the fans, the pressure that goes with it. It's a one club city. There's only one team in that city, and everybody wants them to do well. You've seen what's happened in the recent years of how the club's turned around, and the fans. We had that all the time, and it was a great place to live. My kids was growing up there. I spent most part of my life up there playing soccer, and it was proud to wear that. The thing that jumps out, that was only one size fits all shirts as well, because that's supposed to be a short sleeve, but it's actually up to my forearm as well.
Wow.
So Tomo, the kit man, who's still there, actually didn't do a very good job. I think he was selling them somewhere in Wall's End. So we only had one size shirt, and that's all he gave us.
Yeah. Do you get to keep your shirts? Have you kept shirts throughout your career? I mean,
Yeah, every shirt I wore home and away, I've had framed, and then special ones like the cup final shirt, like the shirt against Champions League against Barcelona. I've kept them. So all of my shirts. I've still got my Wimbledon shirts as well. Later on in my career, I was at Derby County. I still kept them. I used to, when I was in England, I had an office there and had all my shirts put out, and people's shirts that I swapped against, like Totti's when I played against him, Zidane as Juventus, and people like that. We swapped Inzaghi at Lazio. We swapped their shirts. Luis Enrique when he was at Barcelona, but I've got nowhere really to put them at the moment. And I also think that's in the past now. And yeah, it was great times. But yeah, I've still got my shirts. I've still got my medals as well. But I don't have them out on display like I used to.
Yeah. What do you think when you see this man?
The best, just the best coach, the best person. He took the club after Rude by the scruff of the neck. His first game, we ended up winning 8-0, and Shearer got 5 goals. So I think that shows you what man management can do with a group of players in 48 hours. Just an iconic manager, sadly missed. One of the best football minds you're ever going to have, and one just learned so much off of Sir Bobby, just as a person, how to treat people. You know, you said to me, Chris, why? Thanks for coming on. Why would you? Bobby didn't know why you wouldn't want to go on here, you know. So like for me, it was like, you asked me to come on, of course I'm going to come on. You're a Newcastle fan, so I'm gonna do that. You know, we had kids that was in hospital, and particularly at Christmas time, and kids had cancer. He didn't have to ask us. We was going. You know, he drummed that into the players that, listen, this is part of your responsibility for playing for Newcastle. This is not a chore. This is not something that you need to ask. You should want to do it. And he was like that with everybody. The way he spoke to people, whether it was someone that was in the car park or Sir Alex Ferguson, a manager that he went against toe to toe, he treated everybody the same. And you don't see that a lot now with managers and people. But yeah, he was a great man. He was a great man, and he's sorely missed. And he'd be up there, you know, loving what's happening at Newcastle and having that little smile. But he could be a little rascal as well if he. You know, for me and Rob Lee, he come up to me, and I thought I was doing well, and he said, "It's time for you to go, son." So I was like, "Okay, now what do you mean? I'm your vice captain." He went, "We're gonna move in a different direction. You can either stay and be in the academy and, you know, do your badges," because at that time I was doing my A license, and I wanted to get into it, and I was like 33. He said, "You know, but I'm gonna go. Aaron Hughes is ready now to play, as Jermaine Genius is, as Kieran Dyer is, as Craig Bellamy. You've done what I needed you to do for the last couple of years, but they're going to be the future." And I said, "Gaffer, you know, I still want to play." But he did it in such a way that now he was right. Now he was totally right, and he didn't do it condescending. He didn't do it in a vicious way. He didn't. He had a conversation and said, "This is what I'm doing. This is the best thing for Newcastle United, in my opinion." And to be fair, his opinion was normally right. And, you know, as I said, 6 months later, they was in the Champions League. So who am I to argue? So, and, you know, I can't speak highly of Bobby. KK was brilliant. Kenny Dalglish was brilliant. Didn't really endear himself, Kenny, to the media in Newcastle and the style of football a little bit with the fans. But we did get to a cup final. We did play in the Champions League. Rude was different, but this fella, Sir Bobby, was the best. He was the whole package, you know, whether it was fans, journalists, players, managers, everybody respected him and loved him.
You talk about game management, and one thing, a video came up on my Twitter feed earlier today about Sir Bobby Robson talking. I think it was a game against Arsenal that we got Laurent Robert sent off or something. And the post match, I mean, he was on fire, and he was defending his guy.
No, he was.
And for the locker room, that must be, you know, you want to go kill for this man. Yeah,
you did, because he'd ask about your family, just everything. You know, you wanted to do that. He had your back, and we'd give everything for him, and I did. I gave everything for Bobby, and you know, he was such a manager that wanted success for the club. He wanted success for the people up there. And he was ready to stand by his players, and that speaks volumes. Because, and again, when he did that rant, he did it in such a way that you sort of believe what he was saying. You know, it wasn't being condescending, he wasn't being aggressive. He was very, very truthful with Jeff Shreves. I see the interview when he did it before, and so you know, Laurent Robert, he had his back, and he was great, Bobby. He was brilliant.
What do you think when you see this man?
Bad clothes, actually, but no, KK. He used to wear the little crop jackets. KK, just giving me the opportunity to play up there. You know, he said to me, "You'll be a future captain up at Newcastle, and come and join a big club." At that time as well, I'd already spoken to Blackburn, spoken to Celtic, Sheffield Wednesday, Man City. I spoke to Arsenal with David Dean, but they was waiting for Wenger to come in October, and I met. In April, I met KK and Terry McDermott at a hotel in London. He come all the way down to see me, and then went back up to go and play a game against Blackburn. And he just said, "Look, come and join a big club. We want you." And that was it. I said to my agent, he said, "What about the money? Don't even worry about that. That'll take care of itself, the money. I just wanted to sign." So he was great. He was brilliant. The first year when we went up there, he was He was magnificent. But like I said, I think the pressure got to him in the end, and the expectation of him taking us to the promised land was a burden to him, was so much that he wanted it so much. And as I said, unfortunately, it only lasted another 6 months afterwards, and he left Newcastle that following Christmas time, New Year. But just a brilliant person to be around. You know, made you feel like you were walking on water. Love the club, love the people. They love him. I mean, still now, they love him to death. And he was, you know, when things was going well, he was brilliant. He was brilliant. And you know, everybody remembers that rant as well when he did it about Sir Alex Ferguson, about Stuart Pearce. He had everything, you know, what the club wanted to do. And we was going to do it his way. There was no way. Remember me, Les and Peter Beardsley had a chat with Terry McDermott to say maybe we should have a conversation with the gaffer and just see if we can just draw a few games rather than win or lose. And, you know, he come back and said, we ain't changing. We're going to keep playing the way we are. We're the entertainers for a reason. This is what the fans want. So that's what we're going to try and do. And by hook or by crook, we're going to try and win it. And if we don't, we're going to win it that way. We're going to lose it that way. So, it's brilliant manager, but bad close, terrible close.
And I think the fans have a few questions about that. Let's get to the fans' comments because they want to talk to you 100%. The Mighty Win says, are you coming over for the Maidstone FA Cup tie next week? I doubt it.
I would love to, but I can't. I can't get over to Coventry to win it. But I'll be watching it on my my app at home, watching it and sending their regards to George and everybody at the club. So yeah, good luck. But yeah, I won't be there, unfortunately.
Yeah. Ian Toon Trader says, question for Warren. Who was the best coach and manager that you had ever played under in your 6.5 years at the Toon or any other clubs?
Well, Terry Venables was brilliant at England as a coach. Again, another man management. But as I said, for Ray Hartford, when I first went to Wimbledon, who went off to Blackburn and won the Premier League with Kenny Dalglish, Ray Hartford was a brilliant coach as well, really astute coach of the game, telling you certain things to improve your game, where to stand, body position, etc., etc. But I think you can gather Sir Robbie was the whole package. Right. He had everything that Terry had, KK had, Ray Hartford had. That was all in one person. So Sir Bobby was the best I had. You know, I was lucky enough. I think it was like 4 seasons with him. Right. And we had, you know, as I said, I learned so much about the game, but also how to treat people and how to be around people as well. So, yeah, so Bobby was the best for me.
The Mighty Win says, does he remember the Arsenal game when Ginola got wrongly sent off by Winterburn?
Yes, Nigel would get under his skin and upset him, and Dixon as well. They'd both get under David, and David, you know, bet it a little bit. But David, for me as well, when you talk about one of the best players, for me, Peter Beardsley's the best player that I played with at Newcastle. Shearer's the best goal scorer, but Ginola for that first 6 months when he come from PSG I'd never seen things like it. Me and Rob Lee was playing in midfield against Hearts in a pre-season friendly, and he was terrorising people. Then we played against Man City. He did it against someone at Man City. Did it at Middlesbrough as well against Curtis Fleming. He was sensational, Ginola. So he did it. He did it to Gary Neville. And he did it to Lee Dixon, who 2 outstanding players. You know, another reason why I didn't play for England as well, Lee Dixon. He was a hell of a player as well, Dicko. David tore him to pieces, both of them.
Yeah. Barry says, you played a lot of games for Wombles in midfield. Did you prefer playing there or right back?
At Wimbledon, the way we played, I preferred playing in midfield for the Wimbledon team because we had Roger Joseph behind us, and we was quite a direct team, so I could use my athleticism to get up and down and be involved in midfield. There was times I played right back, but I think I was a better right back with the game in front of me than I was a midfield player. But I could do both, and maybe the way Wimbledon played suited me because the ball went directly, and then I was in the final third, getting my crosses in, playing little combinations and trying to set people up for goals.
Yeah. Sean asks, who was the best player you have played during your spell, and what do you think about the current team? We'll have some questions about the current team, but who was the best player you ever played with?
For England, it was Paul Gascoigne, just getting ready for Euro 96. Gazza was just on a different planet, different level. But as I said, Peter Beardsley was the best player. He used to play. He used to train the way he played. and he would order. He'd eat chocolate non-stop. He was always eating chocolate. He's had his problems at Newcastle with one or two things in the past, but as a player when I was there, he was phenomenal, Peter Beardsley. And there were some great players, as I said, really good players. You know, Rob Lee, pound for pound, Gary Speed, Shay Given, phenomenal players. But Pedro was just a little bit different, a little bit of the unusual, but he was a hell of a player.
Barry says, for question for Warren, did you play for England against Brazil? What was that like?
I only played for about 3.5 minutes because John Scales got injured and I come on. But Ronaldo was out there, Jorginho, Roberto Carlos. So I warmed up against them anyway.
Did you manage to get a shirt at least?
I did get a shirt. I forget Ndundo's shirt is number 7. He was a legendary Brazilian player. So I swapped his shirt, got his there. So that there's not. People ask me like, do you think you should have played for England a little bit more? At least I can say, well, my last game for England was against Brazil at Wembley, at the old Wembley. So it don't come better than that. It don't come better than that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Jordy Revolution is trying to watch this walking down the shops really hit a tree already. You can tell what you mean to some Newcastle fans. You know, let's talk a little bit about the tune and what's right now. I mean, what with the club. What are your thoughts? I mean, this season has been a season of up and downs. To say the least, injuries and but we've also played Champions League after you were probably one of the players that played Champions League last, if I'm not mistaken. You know, well, I think you said you left and then we got to the Champions League. But regardless, it's been a while. And what do you think about the two in this season?
Yeah, I think because of the season before, you know, and towards when they first come in, the owners in October to finish off the season the way they did mid-table when they was everybody's team to get relegated, and then for Eddie to come in the following year and produce a type of football that the fans are enjoying, and the success we had going like that, you know, we never had any hiccups and everything was going great. There was always going to be 11-out period, and the Premier League is tough enough as it is, and then you throw Champions League football into that. It was a group of death, but no one can ever take away that night against PSG, like no one can ever take the night away against Barcelona when we beat them 3-2 with Figo playing, Luis Enrique, Rivaldo, all these great players. We beat them and they beat, you know, Mbappe and PSG. So this season was always going to be a challenge. It's been heartbreaking to lose so many key players, you know, the injuries, but a lot of teams have injuries, but we've had injuries to key players being out. Eddie, for me, is still a wonderful manager and a coach, and the ownership that I don't know, but I've met a couple of times, are level-headed to know that the club is going in the right direction. The young players that are coming in, Lewis, Marley's done great, probably needs a little bit of a break now. Big Dan Burns, a local player as well. So Sean Longthorpe, another young player, a local boy. We've always, as fans, you know, and I got a little bit of criticism just mainly from one or two people, not from too many. Just after COVID, when the club was really in a turmoil, and you know the phrase were, you know, it's a shadow of itself. It's just about surviving, just about ticking along. And I come out and said, Newcastle is not a club that just ticks along and survives. It's a club that goes out and competes. And you know, people saying, well, you know, they didn't have the money, the ownership, the manager. Regardless of that, look what Sir Bobby Robson did in a short space of time with a group of players and man management. And then he did virtually the same. Get a club that was in the relegation zone, not really going anywhere. They got some players on loan. They give a new lease. Kieran Trippier arguably could be one of the best signings the club's ever done, with Rob Lee, with Shay Given, people like that, and give us a lease of life. And now the club, the way it's being run for the future. It's not just a short term. If it don't work, someone's going to pull the plug. The ownerships are in this long term, but they want success. So all I would try and say to the fans is try and get used to playing in the Champions League, because that's where the owners want to be. That's where the players want to be. That's where the coach wants to be. It's the first time probably in 15 years that club is in sync with the fans, which is the most important thing, the coach and the ownership. Before that, from when Bobby left, there was always a fraction like the fans didn't like the manager, or the manager didn't like the owner, or there was always something wasn't in sync. So this now is in sync with everybody, and the expectations are high. But it's Newcastle Football Club, of course, the expectations should be high. When Kevin Keegan bought me, Shaka Hislop, David Ginola, and Les Ferdinand, it wasn't just about ticking along and seeing how we go. He brought us in to win it, or at least try and win it. So that's the same mentality that we've got now. It's took 25 years, but it's getting back to that mentality of competing and challenging. So I think the club's in a really good position. I think they're, the fans are enjoying it. They sometimes have to think a little bit what was going on a few years ago. And I think you said it great, Chris. We've had a lot of injuries. If we'd had everybody fit and we were still losing games and the system wasn't right, the managers maybe, then there might be a concern. But there's a legitimate reason why we're not doing well. We haven't got all our best players on the field. Yeah. And if we can't do that, and he's shown you when we have got them, we win the games. So let's get everybody back. Botman's come back. Murphy's come back. I mean, Murphy's not your best player, but he's a good squad player that will help, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. Hopefully things will turn around. I'd rather have a blip in December than have it in April and May, and then we tail right off. Hopefully we can get back to winning ways.
Do you think, even though again we've had a rocky season, but we've showed this whole season we beat Manchester United out of the Carabao Cup. We beat Arsenal at home. We beat teams that are competing for the title. Do you think that we can make a run at the FA Cup this season?
Yeah, I really do. I think people keep asking me what's success, and I think if we can get to a cup final like we did last year and get in Europe, I think that's a great achievement. I think it's a good achievement, and then the next big thing would be to try and win it. So if this season can mirror what we did last season, which is get into Europe. Now, we won't probably get in the Champions League because it's too far away, but when I'm in Europe, it could be European football. That gives you that opportunity to get in the Champions League and to get that experience to travel and play Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday. That's different for players to do. And if we can do that, I think, again, we've had another good season considering the problems that we've had. So, yeah, I think we can. We've got a good draw against Blackburn. They've obviously just got rid of John Dale Thomason, who was a Newcastle player when I was there. Didn't work out great for John Dale, and he would have been loving that game, but they're not doing well in the Championship. So I just remember my time when we was there. We played certain games. We went to Goodison and we won 1-0 with Ian Rush. And you thought, cool, we've nicked that result, and now we're in the quarterfinals. We beat someone else. Now all of a sudden you're in the semi-finals, and we played Sheffield United. So before you know it, you can be close to it. So, yeah, there's no reason. Listen, it's going to be a tough game at Ewood Park. It always is, but you're going to have 6,000 or 7,000 Geordies behind that goal. If you don't win that game, you don't deserve to be in a cup final. So you've got to go out there and win it. We've got better players pound for pound. It is the FA Cup. We've seen that with Maidstone that beat Ipswich, who are a good Championship team trying to get in the Premier League. Maidstone beat them with 2 shots and 2 goals. So anything can happen, but Newcastle and Eddie, I'm sure, will have his eye on winning it, or at least getting to the cup final, and obviously trying to get in the European football again.
Yeah, I got a series of fiery questions. I'm going to put you on the ropes here, and you have to, have to make it. You have to choose. So the first one is choose between going to your kid's university graduation or going to a Champions League final that Newcastle is playing in.
My kids are not at uni, so it's fine. I go to a Champions League final. 2 of them are trying to be soccer players, so they're okay. That was an easy one.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Complete the phrase. Newcastle will win the Premier League in what year?
27, 28.
Yeah, a lot of people say 27. A lot of people say that. Okay, so Newcastle wins the FA Cup. They haven't won a trophy yet. They win a FA Cup. But Sunderland must win the Premier League. Do you take that deal?
No. Well, it would never happen because they got to get out of the Championship first.
Steve Ray told me the same thing. No, it will never happen. But he was struggling with himself. He was struggling.
Yeah. No, I couldn't have them winning it. No. I'd rather give the FA Cup back. Yeah, I'd rather give it back.
Who's your football idol?
Growing up was Brian Robson, and as I said, Liam Brady was a hero of mine. but as I said, the utmost respect for someone like Stuart Pearce. You know, I was lucky enough to play with him with England, and then I played with him with Newcastle. So someone like Stuart Pearce, I've got the utmost respect for as a player, as a person. But yeah, Brian Robson, when I was younger, was there. My dad was a bit of a boxing fan, so I have got a soft spot for Muhammad Ali.
Oh yeah.
And I was lucky enough to watch Jordan play for the Bulls. So he's one of my favourites as well.
You playing in your position, would you rather score or assist?
Score. Of course I would score. I don't score very often, so score. Everyone likes to score a goal.
Yeah. Well, Nobi said assist, so yeah, I think he might have been lying.
Yeah, because Nobby lies. He might have been drunk by that point.
I think you might have answered this. Who's the best teammate you ever played for in Newcastle or in Newcastle? Maybe the player that you understood you better. I guess you could say that.
Yeah, I mean, me and Rob Lee, we spent over a decade playing together at Newcastle and then off at Derby County as well. So, you know, me and Rob go back a long, long way. And even when we see each other, which is not a lot, and it was his birthday a little while ago, keep contact with him. The great Gary Speed, unfortunately, I lost him 4 years ago. And, you know, that was tough for everybody to deal with. And I've got a great admiration for Shay Given. I think he's a brilliant person. One, he was a great teammate as well. Brilliant. Les Ferdinand, I keep in contact. But Shay, I just love Shay as a person. I just love the way he is. I love his outlook in life. I love how he is with everybody. Do you know what I mean? With how he treats everybody. He's the only Irishman that can't sing or dance, which is brilliant as well. But he thinks he can. But me and Rob Lee, as I said, we played a long time together. And had a lot of good times, a lot of good times together. And we always seemed to, even in the dark times, we'd have a laugh. And he's the only person, can I tell you this, with Rob Lee, that I used to go out with a drink with, and I would buy the first 3 rounds. It was quite incredible that someone would do that. There's only me and him in the bar, and I would buy the first 3 rounds. It was how he did it. It's remarkable. It's quite, you know, impressive that he would, when it was his round, he'd make some, you know, excuse or reality that he couldn't quite get it at the moment. So I got it, and then it'd be, I got the last one. It's your round now. So Rob
he always forget his wallet.
Oh yeah, I mean he's got the longest pockets, the shortest arms you ever see. But he's a great guy. Yeah, I love him.
Who was the funniest teammate you ever had?
Stuart Pearce was brilliant. Stuart Pearce would crack me up. He was so funny, so near the mark in the things he would say, but just a funny person. And we was on that same wavelength. Like we'd see someone walk in and they might have like a funny shirt on or something, or something would happen, and we both say the same thing. But for me, he would have me in stitches. And just a funny person as well. So. No, and Nobby, we went to the cup final, me and Nobby, last February, and it was great. Newcastle asked us to go, and we shouldn't have done because we lost the game. But I was talking to Nobby, and it was great. We was talking about the game, not the game that I just played, but just the game in general. But then we started reminiscing, and I was in stitches for an hour with Nobby because the way he told the stories, the way he was, just a fun. And again, you have to remember, English is his second language.
Yeah, right.
But he's saying his points and the way he's coming across. I'm a big fan of Nobby's. I'd love him to get a coaching job at Newcastle because I think he deserves it. But yeah, but Stuart Pearce for me, he's a funny guy. And you would never think as well. You never think so.
Yeah. You got to choose this current St. James's Park or a new St. James's Park in a different location.
No, there's only one St. James's Park. I got told off with Fox at soccer. I was there. My boss, Dermot Macquarie. And it was Mike Ashley took over, and it was the Sports Direct Arena. And I'm not a big fan of that anyway. You know, Americans do it. You know, the Gillette Stadium, it's the StubHub, it's this, it's that. It's all to do the crypto stadium now, not the whatever stadium it was before. But just out of principle, I wouldn't say it. And you know, here we go off to the Sports Direct Arena. I mean, no, you mean St. James's Park. And my boss went in my head, don't keep saying that. It's the Sports Direct. I said, I'm not. For me, it's always been St. James's Park. So that's what I know. I played there for 7 years. I captained it. For me, it's St. James's Park. So I got a slap on the wrist from my boss for doing that.
All right, current St. James's Park. Choose a player on the current squad of Newcastle that you would like to take in that would play for you or with you in your era.
Probably Trippier. He's better than me.
Come on.
No. I love Bruno Guimaraes. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he needs a Rob Lee or a Speedo next to him. He needs that type of player to really see the potential that he's got. I think he's being asked to do too much. So I'd love to see him in that team as well. Botman's a hell of a player. Botman's a player. Unfortunately, I don't think the rest of them would get in it.
Yeah. Hey, that's okay. That's okay, man. That's just all right.
Yeah, but they're good players though. But yeah, the others won't get in.
I had a question for you. Now that you live in San Diego, I mean, actually, I have a friend named Simon. He runs the San Diego Mags. Like, do you ever go to watch the games to a pub, or are you?
No, they've asked me. Simon's been great. He's given me a couple of the San Diego Mags T-shirts, and I've worn them a couple of times. He's asked me to go to some of the games, to go over there, and for whatever reason, normally because I'm just getting out of bed at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I don't really drink beer at 6 o'clock in the morning to go over there, but they just do it. Literally, it's about 15, 20 minutes from where I live. I will do Simon and the San Diego Mags. I will get out there sometime. So they have these great T-shirts. It's got the Newcastle Brown Owl. It's got the San Diego Mags on it.
Amazing.
Some real characters there as well. So I will try and make it out one day. Definitely. I've been to Denver. I've been over there to see the supporters club. I went out there to see them, and I know up in Portland with Chicago. So I keep in contact with a lot of the supporters. Philly, when I was out there, we see a lot of people. So we know the Geordies are everywhere. The Geordie Nation is getting bigger and bigger. So hopefully we'll have one cup final or one game that we could all come together and take over the place.
It's awesome. It's awesome how again, I started this podcast probably 4 months ago and been a Toon fan for a while, but I just never paid attention. But like the Newcastle fans, there are a lot of Newcastle fans here in America. I mean, it's
I was walking around about 5-6 years ago, and there was a guy, a Geordie, a Newcastle person, was walking along, and he said, "Up the Mags," and like that was in Del Mar, in California. Thousands of miles away. One thing, as I said about Newcastle fans, is you don't really have a choice. If you're a Geordie, you're black and white. It's not, well, I might support Chelsea, or if I'm in London, I might support Arsenal, or that ain't a choice. Either your uncle will buy you a shirt, the dad will buy you a shirt, your grandparents, someone will buy you a black and white shirt, male or female, it doesn't really matter. So whenever you're related to a Geordie, I was actually skiing in Steamboat in Denver, gone skiing. The guy that was doing all my boots and everything, his granddad was a Newcastle fan, his dad was a Newcastle fan, and he's a Newcastle fan. He's never been to the games, but he watches them all on TV. It's that generation. So you don't really get a choice where, I'm maybe a prime example. My eldest son's an Arsenal fan. My middle son, because my brother's a big Arsenal fan, so he's an Arsenal fan. My middle son is a Man United fan because my nephew was a big Man United fan. And my youngest one's a Chelsea fan because they was winning games at the time. So he's a Chelsea fan. But if you're a Geordie, they wouldn't be given a chance. They're just black and white, and that's it. So that's why there is so many Geordies around, and probably under the Ashley era, we was putting our head in the sand because there weren't any good times coming along. But all of a sudden, now we're getting. You can be proud because of what the team's doing and how they're playing. Thankfully, now the Newcastle fans are coming out in their droves, and I think you've seen that in the atmosphere at St James's Park.
Yes, that's true. Listen, we got to wrap up because we guys have a lot of questions, but Warren has stuff to do. He can't just sit here and talk to me all night. And I appreciate him coming on. It's been great. Didn't get to ask as many questions that from the fans, but he'll be back on at some point in time to get your question. But I wanted to ask you one thing. Would you interested in coaching and managing? I mean, is that something open?
Yeah, very much so. I did it at the Galaxy when I first come over, when the academies first started in 08 until 2010. I've got my pro license. We're having a MLS team here in San Diego in 2025. I'd love to be involved then. I wanted to be involved in the USL team that was here, but the ownership went in a different direction. But yeah, I'd still love to be involved in coaching. I feel I'm still young enough. I've gotten, not only did I play 500 games, play for my country and everything else, but I studied 7 years to get my BA and pro license. So I feel like I've got something to offer. So if anyone needs a coach, please reach out to me. I'm available.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead and do so. I want to finish up with this comment by Barry. He says, "You were amazing speaking to the fans after training. You stopped for everyone. A true star. What did you think of all the fans coming to watch training?" And before you answer that, I will corroborate and say that Warren Barton, it almost feels like he's just another guy walking on the streets. I mean, he'll talk to you, he'll answer any message. It's just another guy, kind of like Nobi Solano. And maybe that was the teaching from Sir Bobby Robson that you guys, held on to. But thank you for that. And of course, what do you think about all the fans coming on to watch training and all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, when I used to go to at Durham, there used to be 5,000-6,000 people watching you train. But at Wimbledon in the Premier League, we might only have 3,000 watching us play. So you went into an environment where you had everybody was there, and it was our, and it wasn't our duty, but Kevin Keegan made it perfectly clear that you signed all the papers, and people like Lee Clark, Peter Beardsley, Steve Howie, all the local lads, like said, look after the fans. But you just knew that anyway, and we'd sign there, whether it was snowing, we'd have some games where people would be around the ground, and Terry McDermott and Kevin Keegan would be on top of a hamburger stall having a cup of tea and a sausage roll while we're training and with the fans and mixing in. So it was just a great time, great fans, great people. And as I said, I loved every minute of it. So yeah, it was very unusual because I come from a club in London that was a smaller club to that, and it was definitely an eye-opener. It used to take you 20 minutes to get out your car and get into the locker room, and you better not leave anybody out because you'd hear about it. So, and it was something that we all did. It wasn't just me. We was all out there doing it.
Yeah. Well, listen, we had a great chat. I appreciate you for coming on the show, Warren. And anything that you would like to tell us, where can we find you? Let us know, man.
Yeah, just on social media, obviously on X, Warren Barton 2, and then on Instagram, Warren Barton 22. And as I said, I'll be back on there, Chris, if you need me at the end of the season. Let's keep the questions coming. Keep supporting Newcastle. It's going to be ups and downs, but a true fan, a true supporter sticks with their team through thick and thin, and that's what Newcastle fans are.
Yes, sir. Again, the legend Warren Barton, ladies and gentlemen. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Smash the like button. And again, you're going to see him at some point in time back on the show. Hopefully, he'll be managing. Well, he might not come on the show if he's managing, but hopefully he gets a managing job. There's a lot of teams in the MLS that need you, man. That they need this.
Yeah, I keep on applying. I don't get anything, so maybe it's something there. But yeah, no problem. I'll always make time for you, Chris.
We'll see you guys on the next one.